Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Ms. Lee of California.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to our ranking member, and thank you, Mr. Director, for being here. Good to see you. First, let me just say this budget is really shameful. It dismantles our basic living standards that Americans have turned to for decades and pushes millions of people into poverty. It will destroy people's lives. Now, let me list a few of these cuts. You cut $213 billion in SNAP, $72 billion in disability programs, $3 billion in rental assistance. You cut in half adult employment and training programs. You eliminate the Workforce Innovation Fund. You cut education by 10%. You eliminate the Minority AIDS Program, and at the Office of Minority Health, you eliminate this program specifically for people of color to begin to help close these health disparities. You just totally eliminate these programs. You eliminate Tiger grants, which have created thousands of jobs. You cut $1.4 trillion in Medicaid, and you eliminate education programs important to low-income and students of color, like Gear Up. It's hard to imagine how you can be proud of this budget, Mr. Director, especially since these cuts are to pay for the tax cuts for the wealthy, billionaires, millionaires, and corporations. It's clear to me that you don't care about paying down the debt or the deficit, because this budget really shows exactly what this tax scam was all about. So let me ask you about a family, for instance, in Kentucky. I think the minimum wage there is about $7.25 an hour, $7.50 an hour. Family of four, $25,000. What in the world is this going to do to that family who's struggling, working each and every day to take care of their family, and then you come up with this kind of a budget? And secondly, I want to ask you about this military parade that the president's proposing. You know, the parade that is very similar to those held in authoritarian countries like in North Korea. How much is that parade going to cost, and where is that money coming from?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'll answer the second question first. We actually have military parades in this country before. I think we had one recently, as recently as the 1990s, or maybe more recently than that. I've seen various different cost estimates from between, I think, $10 million and $30 million, depending on the size of the parade, the scope of it, the length of it, those types of things. We've not accounted for it in this year's budget simply because it's come up at the last minute. So we'll continue to work with you folks if we decide to push forward with that initiative.
No, if who decides to push forward? You mean the president?
Yes, ma'am. That's who I work for.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said it we.
We, being the administration. I'm sorry.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no. Okay. But of course, you'd have to appropriate funds for it, or we'd have to find funds for it that you've already appropriated.
That would be estimate $10 to $11 million.
I think, again, the estimates I've seen, they're very preliminary, so it's between 10 and 30 depending upon the length. Obviously, an hour parade is different than a 5-hour parade in terms of the cost and the equipment and those types of things. So you've asked a straight question. I've tried to give you as straight an answer as I have. We've not done much research on it yet. Regarding pushing people into poverty, your family in Kentucky, for example, Congressman, it probably doesn't come as a surprise that Republicans and Democrats do see things a little bit differently. We see the best welfare program as a job, and we see a healthy economy as a way to push people out of poverty, allow them to lift themselves out of poverty. The reason you see reductions in SNAP and TANF and the other types of programs is, yes, we offer reforms, improvements to the programs that we think can work better, but we also assume that there's fewer people on there. I would think that would be a goal that we all share. If you increase, if you propose continual increases in SNAP and TANF, aren't you just assuming that you're never solving the problem? In fact, I think we would all want to see a world where we don't even have to spend any money there because no one should need the program in a perfect world. And we don't get there with this budget, but we do think we move in that direction. That's one of the reasons you see less spending on those types of programs.
But sir, $7, $8 an hour, people need a little bit of help from their government. First of all, in terms of job training, in terms of job retraining. You're cutting all of these programs in the Department of Labor. You're cutting out the Tiger Grants. You're cutting funds that actually create jobs and economic growth. And so this budget goes in the opposite direction for people who are living on the edge. And believe you me, I understand what SNAP is about. I formerly was a SNAP recipient because I needed that bridge over troubled waters raising my kids. It wasn't permanent. It was just so I could get through what I was going through, and that's the majority of people in this country. And so to take that away now, and what you want to do is put them in a Depression era box with food such as food that's high in sodium and sugar content. It's kind of it's a way that you're trying to make sure that people who are low income, that we don't believe that they have the dignity that they deserve, the way you're reforming and trying to put SNAP into a box now. And I think it's a shame and disgrace that you're treating low-income and working families in this manner.
It is Thursday, the 15th of February of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh, we did have Fat Tuesday, so we're right in. We're right in there, yes. Ash Wednesday yesterday, if you were confused about why so many people on the news had smudges on their foreheads. A little religious practice during the awakening of springtime. Yes. Well, another school shooting. Very, very tragic. It's only a matter of time before we forget it. We're already being admonished that it's not the gun, it's the mental illness. And I go, I presume that could be correct. There is something mentally ill with our society that would allow this to continue. All right, I'm over this stuff about blaming it on mental illness, because there's a lot of mentally ill people that don't go out and shoot up people. And probably one of the reasons why is that it might be a little tad difficult for them to get a weapon. So why did Trump sign a bill to make it easier for the mentally ill to get a weapon? Yeah, why? Oh, and he's tweeting this morning that, if you see something, say something. He's blaming the kids, for not bringing it up. Well, excuse me, Mr. President. Turn off Fox News and start triangulating and get some truth in your life. Not only was this kid noticed, and not only was something said about him, but there were restraining orders brought against him. He could not come onto that campus with a backpack because he had made so many threats. He shot guns, brought weapons on campus. The school did all they could as a stand-your-ground state. So, please, stop it. The FBI knew about it and couldn't do anything. Why? Because in that state, doctors can't even ask their patients if there's a gun in the house. It's against the law for the doctor to ask that. So, well, or at least used to be. I presume that law is still on the books. It may have been lifted. And what's Pam Bondi doing there? Ugh. All you have to do, she said, anybody trying to, profit on a GoFundMe site off of this tragedy, we're going to go after them to the fullest extent of the law. Well, I would suggest donate, I don't know what, $24,000, $26,000 to her re-election campaign committee, and she'll just refuse to drop charges against you like she did for Trump University. Conveniently. Mm-hmm. Well, I say that there are too many guns in the hands of too many people, and that's why we have too many shootings. It's simple as that. But don't blame the gun. And I don't blame the gun. I blame the NRA, the gun manufacturers. You know the AR-15 is flying off the shelves out of gun shops. Their sales have been down. They needed this. Gosh, the spring is just happening and their sales are down, and this is usually when they're making a lot of money. They haven't quite got used to the black guy not being in office. So they need these. They need the Las Vegas shooter. They need this high school shooting in Parkland, Florida. Sales have been down. Local gun shops are going out of business. Don't you know how dire that is? Well, they're making sales today because it was the AR-15, the weapon of choice for serial killers everywhere. So when they talk about mental illness, what about the mental illness of a society that condones the practice of, serial killers like this AR-15, I have to get one now because they're going to try to ban them. Okay, that's not mentally ill, all right? That's just normal. What's on the rest of the menu today? Barbara Lee at the top there. Slamming, I hate that onerous little, he's a gnome. Mick Mulvaney, I hate him. But, Barbara Lee, I love Barbara Lee. She was my representative when I lived in the East Bay for so many years. In fact, a few decades. She's my hero. I love her. And she slammed that little gnome for, Trump's $30 million military parade that will last 1 to 5 hours. We don't know yet. That could support 24,000 people on Snap for a whole year. Slam that little gnome. Thank you, Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee speaks for me. And then on the rest of the menu, a Russian citizen gets 12 years in a U.S. prison for his role in a wide-ranging hacking scheme. Yeah, about 160 million credit card numbers. And other things, too. Alabama law enforcement wants to profit from people who are not convicted of a crime. Jeff Sessions is in power. Let's get the asset forfeiture thing going like a well-oiled machine. And serious questions arise in determining who is behind the forged letter targeting Maxine Waters. Could it be Roger Stone with the help of Russian trolls? And after the break, we'll move to the chef's table to consider the statement by the son of renowned Iranian-Canadian environmentalist Kavous Seyed Emami that his family has been threatened by authorities after his father conveniently turned up dead in an Iranian prison. And white Alabamans tried to secede from their school district because it had too many black kids. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. go to our homepage, which of course is at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice a fabulous player there at the top, and click on that. Go ahead. It works. And if you need to refresh your browser, do that. It will work. And scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll notice the chat room link. Kelly Lincoln, our roaring girl, monitors that quite diligently during the day. You can also contact me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And also, I can be found on Daily Codes as Justice Putnam, where you will find show notes and links to each of the daily shows. There you go. Also, to the leftish of the chat room link there, down at the bottom of our homepage, are the Contribute Donate buttons, and that is how we pay the bills. And we are unable to do it without you, and your generosity is greatly appreciated. Yes. Okay, so this Russian citizen getting 12 years in a U.S. prison. They had to extradite him, too. Not from Russia. Okay, this is out of Reuters, penned by Brendan Pearson. And he works out of New York. A Russian citizen was sentenced to 12 years in prison on Wednesday for his role in a computer hacking scheme that compromised more than 160 million credit card numbers and caused hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Vladimir Drinkman, age 37, was sentenced before U.S. District Judge Jerome Simandley in Camden, New Jersey Federal Court. Drinkman was arrested in the Netherlands in June of 2012 and extradited to the U.S. in February of 2015. This is all during the Obama years. I think there's going to be some changes here. This guy may get a pardon and get to go back home to Mother Russia. Mark my words. Let's see if that happens. I don't know. He pleaded guilty to charges of conspiring to illegally access computers and conspiring to commit wire fraud in September of 2015. Another Russian man who was arrested along with Drinkman, Dmitry Smilanets, was sentenced by Judge Simandley to time served. Smilanets, age 34, pleaded guilty to conspiring to commit wire fraud in September of 2015. And lawyers for Drinkman and Smilanets could not immediately be reached for comment. Prosecutors said the two men were part of a hacking scheme as far back as 2003, in which they helped install sniffers designed to comb through and steal data from computer networks of financial companies, payment processors, and retailers. Remember the hack into Target? That was one of them. Yeah, I had a girlfriend at the time. Well, lady friend. You know what I mean. My friend. She happened to be a woman. And she suffered that. It was a drag for her. And, it actually impacted her credit. And she went round and round with Equifax. Oh, no, they were hacked eventually, too, weren't they? Huh. Yep. And all this happened when they were looking for Podesta stuff and dirt on Obama. And, yeah, it's been going on for a while. Now, Dmitry and Vlad here may not have been actively involved with the FSB or the GRU, the Kremlin. But it is all part of a whole, okay? It works. Now, let's see. The prosecutors said defendants then used an array of computers to store and ultimately sell data they collected, fetching $10 to $50 a piece for credit card numbers depending on country of origin. Wow. I'm in the wrong business then, aren't I? Gee. While the scheme ultimately caused banks and credit card companies to suffer hundreds of millions in losses, including more than $300 million reported by 3 companies alone. 16 companies' networks were infiltrated, including those of NASDAQ, OMX Group, Inc., 7-Eleven, France's Carrefour S.A., JCPenney, JetBlue Airways, and Heartland Payment Systems. Drinkman was originally charged as an unnamed defendant in a 2009 indictment accusing Albert Gonzalez of Miami over his involvement in 5 corporate data breaches. Mr. Gonzalez is serving a 20-year federal prison term. As well they should. Next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, is by Cody Fenwick out of Alternate. You know, if there's any field where the profit motive should play as little a role as possible, you would think it would be police work. You would think, right? No, but police work, like newsrooms all across America, are now expected to be a profit-making venture. That's what it's become, folks. Well, police officers wield an enormous amount of power, and when they are incentivized to carry out their work more aggressively and extensively, abuses are bound to occur. Why else? Is there always the defense? We don't have quotas for writing tickets. And you know they do. But preserving monetary incentives in policing is exactly what Sheriff of Coffee County Dave Sutton and Calhoun County District Attorney Brian McVeigh argue for in a recent op-ed on Alabama.com, in which they defend the disturbing practice of civil asset forfeiture. This practice allows cops to seize money and other valuables from people they believe to be criminals. But many of the individuals who have their money or possessions seized have not been convicted of a crime. The Alabama legislature is considering amending the law so that civil asset forfeiture can only be used against those who have been convicted of a crime, a move both Sutton and McVeigh oppose. You know, when you're addicted to the opioid of civil asset forfeiture, it's really hard to get off. You can't get off of it cold turkey; it could kill you. Got to ease it off. Okay. Also, they aren't charging the person who is not being charged with a crime. They're charging the property as if the property is a person, because I told you. Property is more important in our construct here in the United States of America than life itself. They also oppose putting any funds received through the practice into the state's general accounts. Instead, they think the funds should go back to the law enforcement agencies that seized them in the first place. Because look, we got to make money. You know, we're at a plateau with what you're giving us now. There's no opportunity to make more. We're in America. Incentivize us. Give us an incentive. All right. Sending the proceeds of forfeiture to the state's general fund, they wrote, would result in fewer busts of drugs and stolen property rings. Yeah. What incentive would local police and sheriffs have to invest manpower, resources, and time in these operations if they don't receive proceeds to cover their costs? They seize people's property. It turns out that actually the people had not committed a crime, but they cannot get their property back without jumping through a bunch of hoops. And even when they jump through a bunch of hoops, pay a bunch of fees, oftentimes the property's already been transferred and they can never get it back. Isn't that convenient? Police, being public servants who took an oath of integrity, should have plenty of incentive to enforce the law fairly and evenly. But civil asset forfeiture is big money for Alabama. The state made more than $2 million from the practice, the center found. No wonder law enforcement wants to keep civil asset forfeiture around. Let's see, about 25% of cases of civil asset forfeiture never resulted in charges being filed, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Okay, well, look, like I said, it's a drug, and they cannot just get off of it cold turkey. They got to be eased out of it. Finishing up here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article by Casey Michelle, How to Think Progress. And this is another example of fake news spreading through social media. I don't know if you heard about this, but it's another onerous attempt at, I don't know, disruption. In December, Omar Navarro, the Republican candidate for California's 43rd district, unveiled what he thought could be a bombshell. Taking to Twitter, Navarro revealed that his opponent, Democrat Maxine Waters, wants, this is a quote, wants more terrorists like the one who bombed New York City in California's 43rd district, end quote. As proof, Navarro shared a letter he'd obtained from his campaign manager. Boy, that campaign manager's on the job. Good for him. Now, according to the letter addressed to the chief operating officer at One United Bank, Waters wanted some 41,000 Somali refugees housed in the district's new condominium and apartment units funded and underwritten by One United. Moreover, according to the letter pushed by Navarro, Waters, quote, felt it would be best to announce plans for the program after the November elections, and perhaps even once I've secured the Speaker of the House position. According to this letter, she was counting her chickens before they hatched. The claims, as contained in the letter, were explosive. One problem, though, the letter is a forgery. As the Los Angeles Times wrote, the fake letter contained several inaccuracies. It references multiple committees and subcommittees Waters does not serve on, and lists an address for a district office that has been closed for over a decade. Now Navarro, whose campaign advisor is, wait for it folks, Roger Stone. I know it's a little early in the morning, but Roger Stone is the originator of rat fucking. He was the original rat fucker on Nixon's Dirty Tricks team. Well, he and Segretti. And this, my friends, this letter is a classic rat fuck. Well, this guy Navarro recently was forced to resign as a local traffic commissioner following accusations of pepper spraying a child. And he still has not taken down the tweet. I just wanted to know if it was real, Navarro told Think Progress. We wanted to verify the truth of this. Well, it's out there now, isn't it? Yes. Now, the source of the letter remains unclear. Navarro told Think Progress that his campaign manager obtained the letter from an unknown source. Well, of course, it's Roger Stone. They do this all the time. However, while Navarro's tweet remains up, other accounts, some verified, some anonymous, have been pushing the forgery for their own far more wide-reaching audiences. And that's how it works. And there's various examples here of these various accounts Russian trolls, pushing this meme. Well, while the forgeries circulating appear identical, okay, because there's a couple here. Okay, the one pushed by Saving America may hint at the source of the fake letter. Lining the bottom of the screenshot, a URL points to one of the primary far-right conspiracy sites, 8chan. Okay. It remains unclear how these tweets have generated so many retweets and so much reach, especially since Navarro's original tweet has only seen a fraction of the retweets as those pushed by anonymous accounts. And Navarro then added to think progress about the spread of the forgery. Everybody is putting it out now. All right, let's get to our break, and we'll come back and go through the weather and finish up with the rest of our stories at the chef's table. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. If you're a fan of nature shows, you've probably heard of the bombardier beetle. When disturbed, this weaponized insect can spray a boiling hot jet of noxious chemicals from its hind end, a response that even the hungriest predators find highly off-putting. But what if that predator is so stealthy and quick that the beetle doesn't have time to deploy its signature defense before it gets et? Turns out, the explosion is also effective when detonated from the inside. We know this because a new study shows that the bombardier beetles can use their chemical weapons to escape from the belly of the toad that ate them. They accomplish this Jonah-like feat by using their chemical cocktail to encourage the amphibian to barf them back up. The findings served up in the journal Biology Letters. Researchers collected 37 beetles and 37 toads from a forest in central Japan. Some of the toads, those of the species Bufo japonicus, share their territory with the bombardier beetles. Others, the Bufo torrenticola, inhabit the nearby streams and don't normally encounter these feisty bugs. Back in the lab, the researchers paired off their collected specimens, and each toad was allowed to capture and swallow a single beetle. And then came the fireworks. As the authors note in their paper, an explosion was audible inside each toad, which means that somewhere along the alimentary canal, the beetles dropped their bombs. What happened next depended on the participants. About 35% of the Japonicus toads, who presumably were familiar with the beetles, spit the critters back up, while 58% of the stream toads gave the researchers valuable feedback. Literally, they upchucked too.
My insides are on fire!
As for the bugs, the larger ones were more likely to make it back out. The lucky ones escaped in under 15 minutes, and those less fortunate were in there up to an hour and a half. And though they emerged covered in mucus, all 16 vomited beetles returned alive and were able to walk away. 15 of them were still kicking 2 weeks later, and one survived to tell his tale for another year and a half. And it was largely their emetic emissions that saved them. Bugs who were prodded into depleting their chemical arsenals before they got eaten were never seen or heard from again. The authors note that no toads died as a result of swallowing beetles. But after their contribution to science, they probably avoided hot sauce. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This is 60-Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. In the 1960s and 1970s, the government drafted thousands of young men to fight in the Vietnam War. Many of these young men were too young to vote. They did not have a voice in the elections for government officials responsible for deciding America's role in that war. The voting requirement at that time was 21 years of age. Congress passed a law in 1970 lowering the voting age to 18. The U.S. Supreme Court then ruled that Congress could only regulate federal elections. At that time, only 4 states allowed 18-year-olds to vote. Following the court's decision, steps were taken to amend the Constitution so that suffrage would be extended to 18-year-olds in both state and federal elections. In 1971, the 26th Amendment was added to the Constitution. The amendment grants the right to vote to any citizen who is 18 years of age or older. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour special report recorded on February 14th, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger. Anti-union forces in the United States are aimed at destroying public employee and teacher unions with a Supreme Court case to be heard in February 2018. The case is called Janus versus the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME. The main question in the case is whether a 40-year-old law which protects the financial capability of unions to negotiate collective agreements will be annulled. The 1977 law called Abood versus City of Detroit Board of Education declared that workers who are not members of their workplace union must still contribute financially to the expenses related to bargaining new contracts. These fees are known as agency fees because the union acts as a bargaining agent for workers who have decided to not join the union. The agency fees are known as fair share fees because the non-union workers benefit from the union negotiations, and it's only fair that they pay their share of the costs. Janus versus AFSCME was the topic of a media conference where representatives of 4 major unions warned about the dangers of unions losing the fair share fee. Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, the AFT, was one of the speakers.
Let's be clear. This case is about power. Not from our side. We didn't bring this case. But the funders of this case want a new Gilded Age. This time on steroids. And sorry for me using my social study teacher voice. We had the largest wage inequality in this country since the early 1900s. And what a shock. At the same time as they have attacked union density. They're attacking us because we fight for a better life for working folks. And they see that fight as a threat to their political and economic power. Think about what unions do. We are the vehicle to help working folks secure a voice, economic opportunity, a better life, good jobs that pay a living wage, a secure retirement, neighborhood public schools that are safe and welcoming and create opportunity, affordable college, healthcare so that no one is one illness away from bankruptcy, and a vibrant democracy that rejects bigotry and hate. Because, as Martin Luther King said, jobs, justice, and democracy go hand in hand. It's no coincidence that the same people funding this case are the same people going after voting rights, public education, because all 3, labor rights, voting rights, public education, are the ladders of opportunity for kids and families. And they want to kick that ladder away because they want the economy to be further rigged in their favor. And so, frankly, when we educate our members and the public about what's really going on, about who's behind this, people are really pissed. So we're fighting back. We're fighting back in the courts, in the court of public opinion, and talking with our members. There are many, many groups who are on our side. 88 civil rights groups signed an amicus brief supporting us in Janus, and I was honored to use my other hat and help the AFT write its brief. But it's not simply the argument that collective bargaining helps give people freedom to have a better life. But we're accompanied by states, legislators, Republican, Democratic alike, because they know collective bargaining helps communities be safer, which is why they are filing with us. And we know that collective bargaining works for not just members, but for schools and kids. If you compare the top 10 states in educational performance with the bottom 10 states as measured by the Education Week Quality Counts 2018 data, you see that union density is associated with higher education performance.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. A British judge ruled Tuesday that a warrant for the arrest of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange remains valid, despite the fact that Sweden, which originally sought his extradition, has dropped any pending legal action against him. Assange's legal team argued that 5 years spent by their client inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London was sufficient punishment, but Judge Emma Arbuthnot was unsympathetic, saying Assange's decision to restrict his own freedom didn't negate his responsibility to appear before court. Although legal experts believe Assange would inevitably be let off the hook for violating his past bail, they worry the U.S. will seek Assange's extradition for publishing U.S. government secrets. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has said that prosecuting Assange is a top priority of the Trump administration. The president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, was ordered to step down by his own party on Tuesday as members of the ruling African National Congress said it was time for his second-in-command, Cyril Ramaphosa, to take his place. Zuma has been beset by corruption allegations for years, though he denies all wrongdoing. He has 48 hours to resign or face a vote of no confidence. And tensions continue to escalate between the governments of Syria and Israel, days after the Syrian military downed an Israeli F-16 fighter plane striking positions inside Syria. God willing, they will see more surprises whenever they try to attack Syria, the country's deputy foreign minister said on Tuesday. Saturday's airstrikes reportedly targeted the launch site of an Iranian drone. After the Israeli jet was downed by an anti-aircraft missile, Israel launched more strikes that took out a number of Syrian government air defenses. Syria has been at war with Israel since Israel's founding in 1948, and the United Nations currently monitors a ceasefire line between the two countries. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us to the chef's table. We have broken down and cleaned up the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and returned it to its original lustrous glory as a very eclectic cookbook store. Why do we call it West Coast Cookbook? Because, folks, if you ever visit the West Coast of the United States, you will find the whole world is represented here in some culinary endeavor. Every single part of the world. So, that's why we like it. Some people might call it God's country, but we know God doesn't look upon one particular football team to win. Come on, and it doesn't look upon one particular meteorological geographical zone either. Okay, I don't know where I'm going with it, but why don't we go into weather from around the world? And we start off along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast. It is currently 26 degrees. The Weather Underground says it even feels like 26 degrees. Thank goodness. It's supposed to be warmer today. They say 52. I say 47. And I bet I'll be right. We'll check in tomorrow about that. We'll have a low of 32 tonight, and I think we'll probably have a low of maybe 24 instead, because that's where I'm at. Ostensibly drier conditions, though we will have a mix of rain and snow over the weekend. Air quality right now is considered good at 35 parts per million, but I know my mother would not really. It's better, but I still want her to take care. There's still people burning wood smoke. I used to love wood smoke. And now that my mom has these breathing problems that I have to care for, it is an issue. So pressure has fallen to 29.34 inches. Visibility is down to 7 miles. And humidity is at 95%. So it is cold, but the moisture in the air is freezing and has frozen. Very crunchy. Alrighty, well, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's weather stations that they purchased. And these people live around the world. London is 49 degrees and fair. Paris is 52 with rain showers in the vicinity, and a weather advisory says wind and freezing temperatures. Must be for tonight. Their time. Rome is 51 and sunny. Oh, wow. Kiev is 30 degrees with light snow. Kabul is 39 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 61 and clear. Tokyo is 43 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, well, look at this. They are 71 and clear. Of course, they are still in their summer. Fancy that. San Francisco, California is 47 degrees and sunny. And New York is 49 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. They put them somewhere on their property. That data gets downloaded. And these people live around the world. This first story here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. That's our daily special. Is out of the Agence France Presse. It must just be an anonymous staff writer because they don't name the person. And it might be somewhat of a group effort. Who knows? Come on, Agence France Presse. Recognize your reporters. Come on. Well, the son of an Iranian-Canadian environmentalist who died in prison said late yesterday that his family had been threatened by authorities and that a video of his father's alleged suicide was inconclusive. Iranian authorities had accused Kavous Seyed Emami, age 63, a renowned professor and founder of the Persian Wildlife Heritage Foundation, of being part of an espionage network set up by Mossad and the CIA. They say he committed suicide in his prison cell last week. One of those convenient suicides. Could have had a convenient heart attack. Could have had a convenient polonium poisoning. I guess since he was in prison, it would be a little difficult to have one of those convenient falling out of a 5-story window while moving a piano that you don't own, and you don't live on a 5-story flat. Convenient suicide is always convenient while in a prison cell. Okay. Hassan Rouhani, the president, said on Wednesday, that was yesterday, that he had set up a committee of ministers to look into the disagreeable events occurring in certain detention facilities. Sure. Emami's son, Ramin, a well-known singer, says his mother was told of her husband's death after being interrogated and threatened for 3 hours on Friday. A district court summoned my mother purportedly to meet with my father, Emami wrote on his personal website. Instead, they interrogated and threatened her for 3 hours before announcing the death of my father and having her sign a paper not to speak to the media. Well, she didn't speak to the media. She spoke to her son, and her son then spoke to the media. Well, similar threats of harming my dad had previously been issued from authorities and forced us to keep silent during the time he was in custody. Now, his son saw video, and gruesome as it may be, Emami did describe his father as not being disoriented, but being in somewhat distress. He then goes to the lavatory, bathroom area, and that is out of camera sight, by the way. And then after a period of time, others come in and pull him out of this area. And let's see, several hours later, his body is carried out of the room, and the lawyer's request to see the cell was refused. So the family were told that a post-mortem was carried out prior to Emami's burial on Tuesday, and that the report would take at least 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah, you don't get to see the body or anything. And Ramin insisted he was the only member of the family to watch the video from the cell, rejecting claims by an Iranian judiciary official that his uncle had watched the video, accepted the judgment of suicide, and called off the postmortem. And Emami was arrested along with 7 other members of his wildlife NGO in January. The authorities said that he had been arrested because he and his wildlife NGO were a front to collect information from the country's sensitive and vital information centers, including missile bases, on behalf of the CIA and Israel's Mossad. And members of this network installed cameras in strategic areas under cover of monitoring the environment, while in fact monitoring the country's missile activities. Now, one of the NGO's key projects was monitoring the endangered Asian cheetah, which meant that the NGO operated across large swaths of Semen province, home to military sites and missile testing grounds. Dolatabi, the prosecutor, said the main financial backer was an Iranian British-American citizen with the initials MT. MT. Probably a reference to Murad Tabaz, a wealthy businessman and board member of the wildlife NGO, who was also among those arrested last month. Iran does not recognize multiple nationality and treats all joint citizens as Iranians. Now, if the CIA had no history messing up Iranian politics, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't be able to use him as a boogeyman. Finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays, is an article out of Think Progress by Ian Millhiser. In 1971, a federal court ordered Jefferson County, Alabama, to desegregate its schools. Although that order is still in effect, the residents of a predominantly white city in Jefferson County found a creative way to try to get around it, seceding from the school district altogether. Fortunately for the predominantly black students who would have been kicked out of their schools by this effort, a federal appeals court stepped in on Tuesday. The court held that no, the city of Gardendale, Alabama cannot simply secede from Jefferson County's school district to create a district with fewer black kids. Sounds like gerrymandering almost. Yet this week's decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit in Stout versus Jefferson County Board of Education is a bit of a hollow victory. While people driving Gardendale's secession effort were a little too open about their motivations, 3 other predominantly white cities within Jefferson County succeeded in their earlier efforts to secede. Thanks in large part to these secession efforts, the racial makeup of Jefferson School District diminished from about 75% white and 25% black in 2000 to approximately 43% white and 47% black in 2015. Gardendale's attempt to secede was triggered by two events that allowed predominantly black students in surrounding areas to attend public schools there. The first was a provision in the 71 court order permitting some students to transfer from schools in which their race is in the majority to schools in which their race is a minority. The other was the federal No Child Left Behind Act. Yeah, which allows students of certain underperforming schools to transfer elsewhere. As a result, about a quarter of the students in three of Gardendale's 4 public schools are black, despite the fact that in 2010 the city was over 88% white. The secession effort was spearheaded by 4 Gardendale residents, one of whom eventually became president of the seceded district school board, and another of whom became a board member. Well, you have to entrench your power base. How? Come on. Everybody knows that. Well, victories like Tuesday's, however, are increasingly rare, and they are rare largely because the Supreme Court decision is hostile to public school integration. The first of 3 such decisions stretches back to 1974. Shortly after Richard Nixon moved the court center of gravity sharply to the right by appointing 4 new justices. No one talked about holding back his judgeships for, a year or more just to find out what the hell is going on. And he shouldn't be allowed to have anything as an appointment power during any time of his contested presidency. No one talked about that. So Nixon's appointees provided 4 of the 5 votes for the majority in Milliken versus Bradley, which held that desegregation orders could not cross school district lines unless the court determined that the districts themselves were drawn with racist intent. This decision didn't just limit the tools available to courts hearing desegregation cases, it also defined narrowly the kinds of government action that counted as segregationist in the first place. Well, so was various blows to desegregation efforts, and that is what the Gardendale School District is banking on, apparently. So the secret to segregation, in other words, is to be a little more subtle about it. Bragging about plans to make your schools look just like your white churches is never a good idea if you want to avoid constitutional sanctions, but the court sees no problem with segregation just so long as school districts are discreet. Okay? Remember that. Be a dapper racist, and we'll let you get along with your racism. Look, us working with the Nazis. Come on, clean up your act. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But we will visit with you tomorrow. So for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Stay tuned to the rest of the day for more breaking news on Netroots Radio, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, à tes coeurs. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.